massive alien vessel appeared without warning above Earth's atmosphere, blocking out the sun over half of Europe and casting a shadow that stretched across 3 countries. Sarah Chen stood in the emergency United Nations Assembly Hall. Watching the holographic projection of the ship with her heart pounding in her chest, she had spent 15 years as a diplomat, negotiating treaties and peace accords between nations. But nothing had prepared her for this. The alien transmission came through every communication device on Earth simultaneously. In every language, perfectly translated, the voice was cold and mechanical, carrying an authority that suggested it had delivered this message countless times before. Primitive species of the 3rd planet, you are hereby notified of your incorporation into the Galaxy Council's administrative zone. The voice announced without preamble or greeting. Your world contains resources necessary for the continued prosperity of the galactic civilization. You will surrender all governmental authority within 72 standard hours. Resistance will result in orbital bombardment and the complete sterilization of your planet. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving billions of humans staring at their screens in stunned silence within hours. The world erupted into chaos. Some people called for immediate surrender, others for defiance, and many simply panicked. Sarah watched as world leaders appeared on her screen one by one, their faces pale with shock. The President of the United States spoke first, his voice shaking despite his attempt at composure. We need to know what we're dealing with, he said. Ambassador Chen, you have more experience in high-stakes negotiations than anyone else alive. We're sending you to make contact. Sarah wanted to refuse, wanted to say that negotiating with terrorists who threatened genocide was madness. But she knew someone had to go. I'll need a team, she said quietly. Scientists, military advisors, linguists. If we're going to survive this, we need to understand them. 24 hours later, Sarah found herself aboard a hastily modified spacecraft, approaching the alien vessel that had been designated Station Alpha by Earth's panicked military. The scale of it defied comprehension. Earth's largest space station could fit inside it 1,000 times over. As their small shuttle approached, a docking bay opened in the side of the massive structure, swallowing them like a whale consuming plankton. The interior was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Corridors stretched in impossible directions. Gravity seemed to work differently in different sections, and everywhere Sarah looked, she saw aliens. Dozens of different species moved through the station, some vaguely humanoid, others utterly incomprehensible in form. What struck Sarah most was the clear hierarchy on display. Some species walked with heads held high, adorned in what appeared to be expensive garments and jewelry. Others scurried along the edges of corridors, their bodies marked with brands or collars, their eyes downcast. A tall being with 6 arms and skin like polished obsidian approached Sarah's group. You are the human delegation, it stated rather than asked. Follow me to the council chamber. Do not speak unless addressed directly. Do not touch anything. Do not make eye contact with council members. Sarah bristled at the commands but held her tongue. They needed information more than they needed pride right now. The council chamber was vast, with seats arranged in concentric circles rising toward a domed ceiling that displayed what appeared to be a real-time map of the galaxy. Hundreds of beings sat in those seats, representing species from across known space. At the center, on an elevated platform, sat 7 individuals who radiated authority and age. These were the council proper, the rulers of galactic civilization. The eldest among them, a creature that resembled a floating collection of crystalline shards, spoke with a voice like wind chimes. The human delegation may approach. Sarah walked forward, her team flanking her, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. We come to discuss the terms of your ultimatum, she began carefully. The crystal being made a sound at the translation device, interpreted as laughter. There are no terms to discuss, it said. Your species will submit or be eliminated. This is the natural order of the galaxy. Advanced civilizations guide and utilize the resources of primitive ones. We have brought peace and stability to 10,000 worlds through this system. Sarah felt anger flaring in her chest, but forced herself to remain calm. And what happens to the species you incorporate? She asked, are they treated as equals? Given representation in this council, another council member, this one resembling a massive insectoid creature, clicked its mandibles in what might have been. Amusement representation is earned through centuries of loyal service and technological contribution. It said primitive species lack the wisdom to govern themselves, let alone participate in galactic affairs. You should be grateful we are offering you the opportunity to serve rather than simply taking what we need and leaving your world. A lifeless husk. Sarah looked around the chamber at the hundreds of species present. She noticed that those sitting in the lower tiers all had one thing in common. They wore similar collar-like devices around their necks or equivalent body parts. How many of the species here are incorporated against their will? She asked quietly. The crystal being's shards rotated in a pattern that suggested irritation. Your question is irrelevant, and your time is running short, it said. You have 47 hours remaining to signal your unconditional surrender. Use them wisely. As Sarah's team was escorted back to their shuttle, she made careful mental notes of everything she saw. Security systems appeared sophisticated, but followed predictable patterns. The collared species were everywhere, doing all the maintenance and menial labor, and they watched the human delegation with something that looked like hope in their alien eyes on the flight back to Earth. Sarah's military advisor, Colonel Marcus Webb, leaned close and whispered, "Did you see the weapons on those guards? Energy-based, probably plasma or particle beams, advanced. But not incomprehensibly so. Our scientists have been theorizing about similar technology for decades." Sarah nodded slowly, an idea forming in her mind. How long would it take to mobilize our defensive preparations? She asked. Marcus smiled grimly. The protocols have been active since we detected their ship. He said every nation on Earth is contributing. We might be primitive by their standards, but we're not helpless. When Sarah delivered her report to the unified Earth government, she did not mince words. They see us as livestock. She said flatly, they have done this to thousands of species before us, and they expect us to simply bow down like all the others. They believe we are too primitive and too afraid to resist. The gathered leaders looked at her with varying expressions of fear and determination. What do you recommend, Ambassador? The Secretary General asked. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing her next words would change the course of human history. I recommend we show them exactly what happens when you underestimate humanity, she said. We have 72 hours. Let's make them count across Earth. Hidden facilities came to life. Weapons that had been prepared in secret for decades were moved into position. Humanity had always known that first contact might not be peaceful, and they had planned accordingly. The Galaxy Council thought they knew what to expect from a primitive species facing annihilation. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, it was their absolute refusal to go quietly into the dark. The Galaxy Council's reconnaissance drones swept across Earth's orbital space like a swarm of mechanical locusts, cataloging every defense installation, every satellite, every weapon platform humanity had deployed high. Commander Zephix of the Council's military fleet watched the data stream in with what his species expressed as satisfaction. His scaled skin rippled with colors that indicated amusement as he reviewed the primitive weapons the humans had arrayed against them. Kinetic railguns, he observed to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krell, chemical propulsion missiles, basic energy shields that wouldn't stop a child's plasma toy. Krell chittered in agreement, his multiple eyes scanning through the tactical data. Their most advanced vessels are slower than our cargo haulers. He noted their weapons would barely scratch our hull plating. This will not even qualify as a proper military action. It will be an extermination. Zephix nodded. Already composing his report to the Council, he had conducted 43 incorporation operations during his long career, and this would be one of the easiest the humans had achieved faster than light travel. Yes, but their implementation was crude and inefficient. Their ships were held together with what appeared to be welded metal plates. Their computing systems were laughably primitive compared to the quantum networks the Council had been using for Millennia deployed the punishment fleet. Zephyx ordered 20 vessels. Should be more than sufficient. We will disable their orbital defenses, destroy their major population centers, and accept their surrender within 6 hours. What the Council's sophisticated scanning systems failed to detect were the thousands of objects humanity had carefully hidden throughout their solar system, asteroids that had been hollowed out and filled with weapons satellites, disguised to look like space debris, their true nature concealed by layers of lead and carbon composites. Most critically, the drones completely missed the pattern of human behavior that made them uniquely dangerous. While the Council prepared their punishment fleet, Sarah Chen stood in the command center, buried deep beneath the rocky mountains around her. Representatives from every nation on Earth worked side by side, their old conflicts forgotten in the face of extinction. The room hummed with quiet intensity as hundreds of personnel coordinated the most complex military operation in human history. Status report, Sarah said, her voice steady, despite the fear churning in her stomach. Colonel Webb stood at the main tactical display, which showed the entire solar system in 3 dimensions. All assets are in position. He reported the Council fleet is gathering at the edge of our system. Exactly where we predicted. They're not even attempting stealth. They think we're too primitive to have any deep space detection capability, eh? Young technician named Private Chino, relation to Sarah, spoke up from her station ambassador. We're picking up their communications. They're not even encrypting them. They're discussing the operation like it's a routine training exercise. Sarah felt a cold fury building in her chest. The Council wasn't just underestimating humanity. They were treating the potential genocide of billions as a minor administrative task. Let them come, she said quietly. Everyone knows their assignments. We wait until they're fully committed. Then we show them what happens when you mistake restraint for weakness. The Council's punishment fleet entered Earth's orbital space in a formation that was designed for maximum visual impact. 20 massive warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, arranged in a perfect sphere around the planet's hit, was meant to be terrifying. And it was billions of humans watched through their screens as the alien vessels took up positions, their weapons powering up with an ominous glow visible even from the ground high. Commander Zephyx opened a communication channel to Earth. Expecting immediate surrender, instead, he heard Sarah Chen's voice, calm and clear, on behalf of the people of Earth. We reject your ultimatum, she said. We will not surrender our freedom, our dignity, or our future to you or anyone else if you want our world. You'll have to take it. Zephyx felt genuine surprise. For the first time in decades, you choose extinction. He asked, your weapons cannot harm us. Your defenses are meaningless surrender. Now, and your species will be allowed to survive as servants refuse, and you condemn every human to death. Sarah's response was simple. Go to hell. Zephyx gave the order to fire. The Council ships unleashed a devastating barrage on Earth's orbital defenses. Energy weapons and kinetic projectiles tearing through human satellites and weapons platforms. The destruction was exactly what the Council expected. What they didn't expect was what happened next. From the asteroid belt, from the dark side of the moon, from points all across the solar system, thousands of missiles launched simultaneously. These weren't the primitive rockets the Council had detected. They were weapons humanity had built specifically for this scenario. Using every trick and innovation their scientists could devise, nuclear warheads, antimatter bombs, kinetic impactors, moving at relativistic speeds, and weapons the Council had never encountered because no civilized species would dream of using them. The first Council ship died when a dozen nuclear missiles struck it from 6 different angles, overwhelming its shields through sheer brute force. The second fell when a kinetic impactor, essentially a telephone pole made of depleted uranium, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through its hull like a bullet through paper. Zephyx's command ship shuddered as proximity alarms blared. Impossible, he roared. Where did these weapons come from? Our scans showed nothing. Krell was frantically trying to coordinate their defenses. But the humans weren't fighting like any enemy the Council had ever faced. They weren't trying to disable ships for honorable capture. They were trying to destroy them utterly. They used tactics that no Council species would consider acceptable. kamikaze drones that crashed into ships at maximum velocity, mines disguised as debris, even hacking attempts on the Council's communication systems. They're savages. Krell screamed as another ship on their tactical display went dark. They have no honor, no respect for the rules of engagement. They fight like animals. Sarah watched the battle unfold from her command center. Her face grim, she took no pleasure in the destruction, in the thousands of alien lives being ended, but she felt no guilt either. These beings had come to enslave or exterminate her species. They had given humanity no choice. Target the command ship. She ordered concentrate all available firepower. Colonel Webb hesitated for just a moment. Ambassador, if we killed the fleet commander, there's no possibility of negotiation, he said. Sarah met his eyes. They came here to commit genocide. Colonel, she said, there was never going to be a negotiation. The order was given, High Commander. Zephyx had time for one final thought as 100 missiles converged on his position. His last realization was that the Council had made a catastrophic mistake. They had assumed that primitive meant weak, that less advanced meant less dangerous, had forgotten that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing to lose and everything to fight. Fourth command ship exploded in a flash of light visible from Earth's surface within the next hour. 19 more Council ships followed it into oblivion. Not a single vessel escaped to carry word of what had happened in the aftermath of the battle. Sarah stood before the unified Earth government. Once more the room was silent as she delivered her report. We won, she said. Simply, the punishment fleet has been completely destroyed, but this is only the beginning. The Council will not accept this defeat. They will send more ships, more weapons. We need to prepare for a real war around the world. Humans celebrated their impossible victory, but those in positions of power knew the truth. They had bloodied the Council's nose, proven that humanity could fight back. But they had also guaranteed that the Council would return with overwhelming force. The question now was whether humanity could survive what was coming next, to the depths of space. Automated Council systems registered the loss of the punishment fleet and initiated protocols that hadn't been used in 500 years. Messages began spreading across the galaxy, calling for a true war fleet to be assembled. The Council had been embarrassed, their authority challenged. For the first time in living memory, they would not make the mistake of underestimating the humans again. Humanity wasn't planning to simply wait for the next attack. Sarah Chen was already formulating a plan, one that would take the fight to the Council in ways they never anticipated. If Earth was going to survive, they couldn't just defend, they needed to attack. The emergency session of the Galaxy Council convened in a state of chaos that none of the Elder members had witnessed in their extraordinarily long lifetimes. The crystalline Elder, who served as Council Speaker, tried to maintain order as hundreds of delegates from member species shouted and argued, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. This is unprecedented, bellowed the insectoid delegate. From Sector 7, a newly contacted species has destroyed Council warships. How is this possible? The Vrin ambassador, a being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field, pulsed with colors indicating extreme agitation. 20 ships and their entire crews gone, it said, wiped out by primitives who only achieved FTL travel months ago. The humans must be destroyed immediately before they become a greater threat. Others in the chamber echoed this sentiment, calling for the complete annihilation of Earth and everything on it. But a few voices urged caution. We should investigate how they achieve this victory, suggested a delegate from one of the older incorporated species. If a primitive race can destroy our ships, what does that say about our military doctrine? The Council Speaker's crystalline form rotated in a pattern that commanded silence. The matter is decided, it announced. We will assemble a proper war fleet, 300 vessels, and eliminate the human threat permanently. No species may challenge Council authority and survive. This is not merely about one troublesome planet. This is about maintaining order across the galaxy. While the Council debated in their distant chamber, humanity was already moving. Sarah Chen sat in a small conference room with a hand-picked team of the most brilliant and ruthless minds Earth had to offer. We can't win a defensive war, She stated flatly, the Council has thousands of ships at their disposal. Eventually, they'll overwhelm us through sheer numbers. Colonel Webb nodded in agreement. Our victory was based on surprise and the enemy's arrogance. He said they won't make that mistake twice. The next fleet will come prepared for our tactics. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading expert on the captured alien technology, cleared her throat. We've been analyzing the wreckage from the Council ships. She said their FTL drives are significantly more advanced than ours. But we've managed to reverse engineer the basic principles. We can build faster ships now. Not as fast as theirs, but fast enough. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes intense. Fast enough for what? Dr. Yuki smiled grimly. Fast enough to hit them before they hit us. The plan that emerged from that meeting was audacious to the point of insanity. Rather than waiting for the Council's war fleet to arrive at Earth, humanity would take the fight. To them, small teams of commandos would use the improved FTL drives to strike at Council targets across their territory, supply depots, communication relays, fuel stations, anything that supported the Council's vast military infrastructure. It's guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. Colonel Webb explained to the assembled world leaders, we make them afraid. We show them that conquering Earth means fighting a war across their entire empire. We make the cost of defeating us too high to bear. The first strike team launched from a hidden facility on Mars 3 weeks after the Battle of Luna 8, human commandos crammed into a small ship barely large enough to hold them, carrying enough explosives to level a city there. Target was a Council fuel depot in a system 40 light-years. From Earth, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Reeves led the team, a former Special Forces operator who had volunteered without hesitation. When the mission parameters were explained, everyone clear on the objective, he asked as they approached their destination, we go in quiet. Plant the charges and get out before anyone knows we were there. The fuel depot was enormous. A sprawling complex in orbit around a gas giant, designed to refuel hundreds of ships simultaneously. Its security was sophisticated but predictable. The Council had never needed to defend against infiltration because their incorporated species were all fitted with control collars that prevented rebellion. What the security systems weren't prepared for was a small ship that looked exactly like a Council scout vessel, salvaged wreckage, repaired and modified, approaching with proper authorization codes that Dr. Tanaka's team had extracted from captured computers. A human team docked without incident, moving through the station, was tense. Council species were everywhere, along with collared workers from dozens of incorporated races. The humans wore stolen uniforms and carried forged identification, relying on the Council's arrogance to protect them. Most Council species couldn't tell one incorporated race from another and didn't care to try. Jackson's team split up, each member moving to a designated section of the massive facility. The charges they carried were small but devastating, designed to trigger a chain reaction in the fuel storage tanks. As Jackson placed his final explosive, he noticed one of the collared workers watching him. The alien, some kind of reptilian species Jackson didn't recognize, stared at him with wide eyes. Then, slowly, it turned away and continued working, saying nothing. The message was clear. It knew Jackson wasn't supposed to be there, but it wasn't going to sound the alarm. The team reassembled at their ship and launched, clearing the station with minutes. 2 spare. Jackson triggered the detonation sequence when they were safely away. The fuel depot disappeared in an explosion that lit up the gas giant's atmosphere like a second sun. Similar strikes occurred across Council space over the following weeks. Communication relayed that coordinated fleet movements in Sector 12 went offline. Weapons manufacturing facility on the Vrin homeworld's moon suffered a catastrophic systems failure. A Council supply convoy simply vanished en route to the staging area where the war fleet was assembling, and everywhere the humans struck, they left messages, graffiti spray-painted on walls, in the Council's own written language. We're coming. The psychological impact was profound. For the first time in millennia, Council species felt unsafe in their own territory. The collared incorporated species whispered among themselves, sharing stories of the humans who fought back, who refused to submit in the Council station. The speakers struggled to maintain order as reports of human attacks continued to flood in. How are they doing this? It demanded. How are primitives penetrating our security, destroying our facilities and vanishing without a trace? The military commanders had no good answers. The humans were using tactics that no council species had ever employed. They struck without warning, showed no interest in honorable combat, and seemed willing to sacrifice anything to achieve their objectives. But the most disturbing reports came from the incorporated species workers. Were sabotaging equipment. Minor rebellions were breaking out on worlds that had been peacefully subjugated. For centuries, the humans' defiance had sparked something the Council had thought long extinguished: hope on Earth. Sarah Chen received reports of the successful strikes with mixed feelings. They were hurting the Council, slowing the assembly of the war fleet, but they weren't stopping it. The 300 ships would still come. And when they did, Earth would burn. We need something bigger, she told her assembled commanders, a strike that will shake the Council to its core. Colonel Webb pulled up a holographic display of the galaxy. We've identified the staging area where they're gathering the war fleet. He said it's in the Kepler 442 system, a heavily fortified Council stronghold. If we could destroy or disable those ships before they launch. Sarah shook her head. We don't have the firepower for that kind of direct assault. She said we'd need a fleet of our own, and we barely have a dozen combat-ready vessels, Doctor. Tanaka spoke up from her position at the periphery of the room. What if we didn't need to destroy the ships? She asked, what if we just needed to make them unable to fight? Everyone turned to look at her explain. Sarah commanded. Yuki pulled up technical schematics of Council ship systems. Every Council vessel relies on a quantum communication network for coordination. She said it's how they maintain such perfect formations, such flawless tactical cohesion. If we could disrupt that network, inject a virus into their central command systems, we could turn their greatest strength into a weakness. The plan was risky and required resources they barely had. But it was their best chance. A strike team would infiltrate the staging area, not to destroy ships, but to hack into the command network and upload a devastating cyber weapon. Sarah knew she needed to lead this mission herself. It was too important. It's too dangerous to trust to anyone else. I'll need volunteers, she announced. This is likely a one-way trip. Every person in the room raised their hand. As preparations began for the most crucial operation in human history, the Council's war fleet continued to assemble 300 massive warships, armed with weapons capable of reducing a planet to molten slag. Crewed by the finest warriors the galaxy had to offer, they were preparing to show humanity the price of defiance. They had no idea that humanity was preparing to show them something far worse: the price of underestimating a species with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The human infiltration ship dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, its sensors immediately overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what the Council had assembled. 300 warships hung in space like an executioner's blade, their combined mass greater than some moons. Sarah Chen stood on the cramped bridge of the stolen Council scout vessel, her stomach churning as she surveyed their target. That's not a fleet, whispered Lieutenant Commander Jackson Reeves, who had volunteered to join her team. That's an extinction event waiting to happen beside them. Dr. Tanaka worked frantically at her console, trying to identify the command ship where the quantum communication hub would be located there, she said, highlighting a massive vessel at the center of the formation. That's where we need to go. The plan was simple in concept, but nightmarishly complex in execution. They would dock with the command ship, hack into its central network, and upload a virus that Dr. Tanaka's team had spent weeks developing. The virus would spread through the quantum communication network to every ship in the fleet, corrupting their tactical systems and leaving them vulnerable. But getting to that command ship meant passing through layers of security that would make a military fortress look welcoming. Authorization codes are holding, reported Private Chen from the communications station. They think we're a returning scout vessel from Sector 9. The stolen ship glided through the assembled fleet, passing close enough to the massive warships that Sarah could see crews moving behind transparent sections of Hull. Each vessel they passed could have destroyed their tiny craft with a single shot. As they approached the command ship, alarms suddenly blared throughout their vessel. They're scanning us, Dr. Tanaka reported, her voice tight with tension. Deep scan. Molecular level, they're going to detect the human DNA signatures. Sarah made a split-second decision. Jackson, get to the airlock, she ordered. We're going to have to board them the hard way. The plan changed in an instant, rather than docking normally. Their ship accelerated directly toward the command ship's hull. Council vessels detected the threat and opened fire. But the human ship was small and fast, weaving through the defensive barrage with desperate agility. Brace for impact. Sarah shouted. The ship crashed into the command vessel's docking bay, tearing through the bay doors and sending debris flying in all directions. The humans scrambled out of their ruined vessel, weapons drawn, as Council security forces converged on their position. The firefight that erupted was brutal and chaotic. Jackson and his team laid down, covering fire while Dr. Tanaka desperately tried to access a computer. Terminal energy bolts sizzled through the air, and Sarah felt one graze her shoulder, leaving a burning line of pain. We need 3 minutes. Tanaka shouted over the sounds of combat. I need 3 minutes to upload the virus. You'll have them. Jackson roared back, dropping to Council guards with precise bursts from his captured plasma rifle butt. More guards were coming, and the humans were outnumbered 100 to 1. Then something unexpected happened. One of the collared workers in the docking bay, a being that looked like a upright walking amphibian, suddenly tackled a Council guard from behind. Another collared worker sabotaged a security door, sealing off a corridor that reinforcements were using within seconds. A dozen incorporated species were actively helping the humans, fighting against their own oppressors, despite the pain their control collars inflicted for disobedience. The virus is uploading, Tanaka announced. 90 seconds. Sarah fired at an approaching guard, her weapon nearly empty beside her. Jackson fell with an energy bolt to the leg, cursing in pain but still shooting. The collared workers were dying, their bodies unable to withstand the punishment their control collars delivered for rebellion. But they kept fighting. Upload complete. Tanaka screamed triumphantly. The effect was immediate and catastrophic across the entire fleet. Tactical systems crashed. Navigation computers showed false readings. Weapons targeting systems locked up. The virus spread through the quantum network like a plague, infecting every ship simultaneously on the bridge of the command vessel. Council officers stared in horror at their screens. We've lost fleet coordination. One shouted, communications are down. Weapons systems are offline. The Council admiral commanding the fleet ordered an immediate system purge. But it was too late. The virus had embedded itself too deeply, rewriting core code faster than any countermeasure could stop it in the chaos. Sarah's team fought their way back to the docking bay. More collared workers joined them, deciding in that moment that death and rebellion was better than life and servitude. We're not leaving them, Sarah declared when Jackson suggested they abandon the workers. Everyone who wants to come with us, move now. They commandeered a Council shuttle, cramming nearly 40 beings into a space designed for 20. The shuttle launched as the command ship's automated defenses finally rebooted, energy weapons tracking their trajectory. They weren't going to make it then. Ships appeared from nowhere. Human vessels, a dozen of them, led by Colonel Webb's flagship. Earth's entire combat fleet had followed Sarah to the staging area, ready to support her desperate mission. We've got you, Ambassador. Webb's voice crackled over the radio. Let's get out of here. The human fleet and the stolen shuttle jumped to FTL. Leaving the Council's war fleet in complete disarrays, they fled. Sarah watched the tactical display showing the Council ships attempting to reorganize. Some were colliding with each other. Their navigation systems corrupted. Others were firing randomly, their weapons systems unable to distinguish friend from foe. The fleet that was supposed to destroy Earth had been reduced to a floating junkyard in a matter of minutes. Journey back to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Sarah spoke with the freed workers they had rescued through translators. She learned their stories. The Quellian species had been incorporated 200 years ago, their planet's resources stripped, their population reduced to slavery. The Marine had served the Council for 5 centuries, so long that some younger members didn't even remember freedom. The Varuth had been incorporated so recently they still remembered their homeworld's name. Still dreamed of seeing it again. What will happen to us now? Asked one of the Quellians, a female named Cess, who had been the first to help the humans during the firefight. Sarah didn't have an easy answer. You're free, she said. You can stay with us on Earth, or we'll help you return to your homeworlds, but you're no longer slaves. Cess made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. but Sarah recognized it as weeping when they arrived at Earth. They found the planet in a state of cautious celebration. News of the successful mission had spread, and for the first time since the Council's arrival, humans believed they might actually survive, but Sarah knew better. She called an emergency meeting of Earth's unified government. We bought ourselves time. But we didn't win the war, she told them. The Council still has thousands of ships. They'll rebuild that fleet. And they'll come back. What we need now is to turn this from a fight for survival into a fight for freedom, not just for us, but for every species the Council has enslaved. Colonel Webb nodded in agreement. The incorporated species are starting to rebel. He reported, we're receiving coded transmissions from dozens of worlds. They're asking for help, for weapons, for anything that will let them fight back. Dr. Tanaka brought up a galactic map showing the extent of the Council's territory. Red markers indicated worlds in open rebellion. Yellow markers showed planets where resistance movements were forming. The Council is losing control, she said, but they're also cracking down. Hard reports indicate they're using orbital bombardment on some rebellious worlds. Millions are dying. Sarah felt the weight of those deaths. The knowledge that Earth's defiance had sparked a galaxy-wide conflict that was claiming innocent lives, but she also knew that the alternative, allowing the Council to continue their reign of terror, was worse. We need to hit them harder, she said. We need to go after the Council itself. The room fell silent. You mean the Council Station? Asked the Secretary General, where the ruling body meets. Sarah nodded. We capture it. Broadcast the truth about the Council to every species in the galaxy. We show them that the Council can be defeated. We turn this into a revolution. Jackson, still recovering from his leg wound, spoke up from his wheelchair. It's a suicide mission, he said bluntly. The station is the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. We'd need an army to take it. Sarah smiled grimly. Then we'll build one, she said. We have allies. Now every species that's rebelling against the Council is a potential recruit. We just need to bring them together over the next weeks. A plan took shape. A coalition fleet would assault the Acela station while simultaneous uprisings occurred across Council space. The goal wasn't to conquer, but to destabilize. To shatter the illusion of Council invincibility, messages went out across the galaxy, carried by human couriers and fast ships. The responses came slowly at first. Then, in a flood, species that had forgotten the taste of freedom remembered it. Warriors who had been forced to fight for the Council defected and joined the rebellion. Even some Council member species, horrified by the brutal crackdowns on rebellious worlds, quietly offered their support. Sarah stood in the war room, looking at the assembled holographic representations of the fleet they had gathered. It was a ragtag collection. The Council station hung in space like a jewel, its surface gleaming with the light of a nearby star. Beautiful and terrible in its majesty, it had stood for 10,000 years as the seat of galactic power. Unconquered and unassailable today, that was going to change. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance, a vessel cobbled together from human engineering and salvaged alien technology around her. The coalition fleet numbered nearly 800 ships, a fraction of the Council's total military strength, but more than enough to make their point. All vessels report ready. Colonel Webb announced from the tactical station. Uprisings have begun on 47 Council worlds. Their response fleets are scattered, trying to contain the rebellions. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the station growing larger in their view screen. She had barely slept in weeks, and her reflection in the dark screen showed a woman aged beyond her years by stress and responsibility, but her resolve had never been stronger. Open a channel to the SD station, she ordered the Council speakers. Crystalline form appeared on the screen, its shards rotating in patterns that suggested both anger and fear. Ambassador Chen, it said. And Sarah noticed it used her title rather than simply calling her human. As before, you have made a grave mistake. Attacking this station is an act of war against the entire galactic order. Surrender now, and your species may yet be spared. Sarah almost laughed at the audacity. You came to our world and threatened genocide, she said. You enslaved thousands of species across the galaxy, and you dare speak of us committing acts of war? The Council's reign ends today. Surrender the station, and will guarantee your safety. Resist, and we'll take it by force." The speaker's form pulsed with colors that the translators struggled to interpret. "You are primitives playing at revolution." It said, "Even if you take this station, you cannot govern the galaxy. You lack the wisdom, the experience." The Sarah cut the transmission. "All ships." She broadcast on the Coalition frequency, "Begin the assault." The space around the Council station erupted into chaos. Coalition ships poured in from multiple vectors, their weapon systems firing in uncoordinated but overwhelming volleys. The station's defenses responded immediately. Automated weapon platforms and defense. Drones creating a deadly web of energy. Fireships on both sides began to die. Aquilian frigate took a direct hit from a plasma cannon and vaporized. Council defense platform was destroyed by a coordinated missile strike from 3 human destroyers. The battle was brutal, desperate, and utterly without the formal rules that had governed Council warfare for millennia. The Coalition forces used every dirty trick humanity had taught them: ramming attacks, suicide runs, hacking attempts. Anything that gave them an edge. Jackson led a team of commandos in a daring assault on one of the station's docking bays. Fighting through withering defensive fire, his team suffered heavy casualties. But they managed to breach the hull and establish a beachhead. Docking Bay 7 is secure. Jackson's voice crackled over Sarah's communicator. "We're holding position, but we need reinforcements." Sarah made the call she'd been dreading. "All boarding teams, go now." Shuttles and small craft launched from Coalition ships, racing toward the station under heavy fire. Many were destroyed before reaching their destinations, their crews dying in silence as their vessels disintegrated, but enough made it through on the station. The fighting became close and personal. Council guards, trained in formal dueling and honor-bound combat, found themselves facing enemies who fought with a savagery born of desperation. Human Marines used tactics learned in centuries of terrestrial warfare. Freed slaves fought with the fury of the oppressed, finally given a chance to strike. Baccalian species who had lived under Council rule brought their own martial traditions to bear. Sarah herself led a team through the station's corridors, heading for the Council chamber. At the heart of the massive structure, they fought past barricades and security checkpoints. Every meter gained, paid for in blood, beside her. The Quillian warrior moved with deadly grace, her species' natural agility making her a terror in close combat. Dartanaka stayed close, protected by the soldiers but contributing with her technical expertise, hacking doors and disabling security systems as they advanced. The station shuddered as explosions rocked its structure. Voroth's suicide squad had destroyed one of the main power junctions, plunging entire sections into darkness. Council defenders were organizing a counterattack, trying to push the invaders back to their landing zones, but more Coalition forces kept arriving, wave after wave, overwhelming the defenders through sheer numbers and determination. Sarah's team reached the outer chamber adjacent to the Council's main meeting hall. The doors were sealed with security systems that would take hours to crack. "Blow it." Sarah ordered without hesitation. The Marines placed shaped charges while everyone else took cover. The explosion tore the massive doors off their hinges, sending them crashing into the chamber beyond. Sarah and her team rushed through the smoke, weapons raised inside. The 7 members of the Council ruling body stood in a defensive formation, flanked by their personal guards. The crystalline speaker stepped forward, its form dimmed but defiant. "You have won nothing," it said. "Kill us, and a dozen others will take our places. The Council has existed for 10 millennia. It will outlast you." Sarah lowered her weapon, and her team followed suit. "We're not here to kill you," she said. "We're here to put you on trial." The speaker's shards rotated in confusion. "Trial." Sarah gestured, and Dr. Tanaka activated a holographic projector. Images filled the chamber. Accords of Council atrocities. Species enslaved, worlds destroyed, populations reduced to servitude. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "The galaxy needs to see what you've done." Sarah said they need to understand that the Council's authority was built on fear and oppression. "So you're going to surrender. And we're going to broadcast your surrender to every inhabited world in known space." The Council guards raised their weapons, But the speaker made a gesture commanding them to stand down. Its shards pulsed in what might have been resignation, and if we refuse. Sarah's expression hardened. Then we leave your bodies here as a monument to tyranny and find someone else to stand trial, your choice. The silence stretched for a long moment finally. The speaker's form dimmed in submission. We surrender. The broadcast went out across the galaxy on every frequency. Through every communication network, billions of beings watched as the Council, the rulers of galactic civilization for 10,000 years, knelt before a human woman and surrendered their authority. Sarah addressed the galaxy. Standing in the council chamber, surrounded by warriors from 100 different species for too long, the council claimed that peace required subjugation. That order required oppression. She said, "Today we prove that freedom and cooperation can exist together." The council is dissolved. Their authority is revoked. Every species they incorporated is hereby declared free and sovereign, but freedom comes with responsibility. She paused. Letting her words sink in, we propose the formation of a new galactic body, the Free Species Assembly, where every species, no matter how small or how recently contacted, has an equal voice, where decisions are made through consensus, not conquest, where diversity is celebrated, not crushed. The response across the galaxy was mixed. Some species celebrated immediately, removing their control collars and declaring independence. Descended into chaos as old grievances and conflicts resurfaced. Still others waited cautiously to see if this new order would be any better than the old one on Earth. Humanity watched the proceedings. With a mixture of pride and trepidation, they had set out to save their own world and ended up changing the end. Galaxy. The weeks that followed were tumultuous. Sarah worked tirelessly to establish the framework for the Free Species Assembly, mediating disputes between newly freed species, coordinating relief efforts for war-torn worlds. The former council members stood trial for their crimes. Some were found guilty and imprisoned. Others were released when evidence showed they had tried to moderate the council's worst excesses. Jackson recovered from his wounds and took command of the new assembly's peacekeeping forces, a multinational, multi-species military dedicated to protecting freedom rather than enforcing subjugation. Tanaka led scientific exchanges between species, fostering cooperation and shared discovery. 3 months after the fall of the council, the first official session of the Free Species Assembly convened. Representatives from over 3,000 species gathered in a converted space station, no longer divided into rulers and ruled, but meeting as equal. Sarah stood at the podium. Looking out at the assembled delegates, she saw humans sitting beside Quellians. Vorath, next to species they had never encountered before. The chamber was chaotic, filled with arguing voices and conflicting opinions. Nothing like the orderly proceedings of the old councilate. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. I want to thank you all for coming. Sarah began, for choosing cooperation over conflict. Dialogue over domination. The road ahead won't be easy. We have thousands of years of resentment to overcome, resources to distribute fairly, borders to negotiate, justice to serve, but for the first time in galactic history, we're doing this together. As free peoples making free choices. She paused, gathering her thoughts.